This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Scott Spears Now. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about here, and we have a lot to talk about with one of my favorite people, 40th Treasurer of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow, who on March the 1st is celebrating the 30th anniversary of being sworn in as Treasurer of the United States. Mary Ellen, always good to be with you. So much in the news as of late, and I can't wait to get your opinion on some of these things. But with the big 30th anniversary coming up, have you made any plans yet?
Oh no, no plans.
No plans.
I'm just happy.
Is that when you think back to that day,
Yeah.
what is the thing that sticks out most in your mind?
Oh, the crowd. It was an enormous crowd in that building. They were just all squeezed in. Well, there were people out in the hall too that couldn't get in, but yeah, it was a very exciting day, I must say. And there were no chairs in there for anybody to sit down. They had to stand the whole time because there wasn't room for chairs. And they had my family standing up there too, which I always was glad to have them because I wanted them in the picture. And then I tried to talk to people afterwards, and it was just kind of a mess, really. You know how it is when you're in a crowd and everybody's trying to talk to you, and we're taking pictures constantly.
What was going through your mind as you took the oath?
I finally got it. I thought they can't take it away from me now.
It's got to be such a tremendous moment to be up there with the Vice President of the United States, Al Gore,
Yes.
the Secretary of the Treasury, Lloyd Bentsen, who was a very well-known politician.
He was such a nice guy.
You know, tell us a little bit about Lloyd Bentsen, because people remember him. He was a friend of John Kennedy's. He had that famous line when he
Yes.
ran with, Dukakis? Yeah, ran with Dukakis
Yes.
as the vice president, and he told, because Dan Quayle, if you go back in time, Dan Quayle was saying that he was the new Jack Kennedy, and during the line, Lloyd Bentsen laid a line on him and said, Mr. Quayle, you said you're the new Jack Kennedy. Well, I knew Jack Kennedy, and you're no Jack Kennedy.
Yes, right.
Yeah, that was a great line.
It was. Everybody remembers it.
Yeah. What kind of guy was he?
Well, he was, he related to me because we were the only two people in Treasury that ran for office, had run for many offices, really. Everybody else was there trying to add to their resume. And, he was my favorite of all the secretaries of the Treasury that I had. And he was anxious to get his name on the money, and he was tickled to death that I was finally appointed so that would happen. So then we had an event in Fort Worth, Texas for him, and then we had an event for me in Cleveland with for my name. And there was a huge crowd at Cleveland. I remember I was signing money for 3 hours.
It was a huge event at the time.
Yeah.
And I think about this now because in the internet age, everything is so splintered. There aren't just 3 networks and cable television. Everybody's got a source where they can get their information. In those days, it was a big deal if you were on network television or cable television. You had a big audience.
Right.
So it was big, and newspapers in those days everybody got a newspaper every morning.
Yes, they did.
Now,
It's different.
It's a different world now.
Right.
People have asked me this, and I've heard you tell the story before, but I think it's a good time to tell this story. How did you get that job? Because there was a lot going on at the time. You were the treasurer of the state of Ohio. People wanted you to run for governor. There were some articles even written to that effect that you were trying to decide if you were going to run for governor or not. And here comes Treasurer of the United States. When did you first get the inkling, or who called you, or how did that all present itself?
The first call was from the women executives in state government. They wanted to know if they could enter my name in the list, and I said yes, sure. And then I got a call from the Democratic chairman who was from Ohio, and I never can think of his name. It's a simple name, but anyway, those were the two calls I got to have my name submitted, and then we waited and waited and waited, but you know, I was going to be replaced by a Republican, and in the Treasury, so they weren't in a real big hurry to do anything, and so then in March 1st then of that year, then I was sworn in, but the whole system, it works very slowly, really. That's what I found out about the federal government. It's slow, but they're working with the whole country. And, you know, it was different than the state government. The state government, you could do things quicker and get things done faster. And then it was just totally slowed down in the federal government.
Now, it's interesting, just to give people perspective, Bill Clinton took office in January of 93, and you took office in March of 94.
Right.
So he's in office when this choice is being made. What time of year was it when the choice is being made?
Well, it of course started before Clinton was in office.
Oh,
It started in December. November or December, I think.
So
yeah.
92.
Yeah, 92.
Yeah.
And and then it went on, and then I finally got a call in it was around July of 93. Said they had it down to 2 people, and I said, well, who's the other person? And they said it's a woman that ran for the, I think for Congress. It was either Congress or the Senate from Colorado. And then I was cutting up everything in my yard because I was so worried about what was going to happen, you know.
Right,
and
right.
I had a whole pile of cut up branches out in the back of my yard. They said it's a good thing I wasn't doing that on the inside. And then in November 22nd, which, you know, I'll never forget that day when they called me and said that Lloyd Benson was going to call me in a little while and that I had the job. And then they told me not to tell anybody yet because I had to go through all of the investigation. The FBI had to check me out.
So you found out on November 22nd, 1993.
Yeah.
That's fascinating because if people don't know, November 22nd is the anniversary of the assassination of JFK. In 1993 would have been the 30th anniversary of the assassination of JFK.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Because he was shot in 63.
Yeah, that's right.
What an interesting day to find out that information. You think they might have picked a different day but I guess it's a happy day regardless.
It was a happy day. I couldn't stop smiling. Yeah.
Now, how long was it before you were able to announce it?
Oh, well, it was a while. Probably about a month. I would guess a month. It could have been longer. Yeah.
Did you told your family?
Yeah, I told Norman. Yeah, I told my family, and I also I gave a speech in Bucyrus, and they said, you know, and I said and they knew I was being considered, and they said, well, who else is being considered? And I said, nobody.
So that kind of let it out.
That kind of did it.
That kind of did it.
Yeah.
That kind of did it. Now, at that time, you were certainly on the radar as somebody who might be running for governor. How did you deal with those people? Because clearly, at that point, you were not going to go that particular route.
No, that was totally cut off. As soon as I realized that it was possible I was going to get it, everything was cut off. Yeah.
Why, for people who might not understand, why was Treasurer of the United States more important than Governor of Ohio?
Well, the governor of Ohio is very important, but I wanted to be in the federal government. I had wondered what it would be like to work in the federal government because I knew what it was like to work in the state government and the county government, and that's the reason I liked this. I liked what I heard about the job. Yeah, I just thought that sounds like what I want to do.
You know, and a lot of people feel you would have won that election as governor. You certainly were very strong, and Ohio had a different makeup at that time, a voter, I think. You know, time is just what it is. 30 years later now, did you ever think, because obviously you've broken a lot of doors down for a lot of women, but did you ever think 30 years later we would still have never had a female governor of Ohio?
No, I wouldn't have thought that at all.
Yeah.
No. And we haven't.
And what do you, I mean, I know I've asked you this before, but you have had a bird's eye view of Ohio politics. You've worked in state politics here in Ohio. You've seen it on the national level. You obviously have done things as a woman that nobody did. What is that all about? Why hasn't there been a female governor?
Well, and we haven't had a woman president either. It's another issue. I thought we had it with Hillary, but that didn't happen. It's a tough thing to get, but other states do it. It isn't impossible, and we'll just see what the future brings.
You know, I think that's why people find it odd in Ohio, because we are a state, because other states have had female governors. Texas had Ann Richards. So it's bizarre to a lot of people that here we are, a state that 2 times voted for W. Bush, 2 times voted for Obama, 2 times voted for Clinton, 2 times voted for Trump. So we certainly don't have any Democratic or Republican voting pattern when it comes to president. People would feel, well, of course there'd be a woman governor there, but yet, in a swing state in the Midwest, not yet.
When I was still running for governor, I went and talked to Ann Richards and to the governor of Oklahoma. I think it was Oklahoma. She played the harp, which was very delightful. But Ann Richards was a good friend of mine, and she said, "I'm always tired." She said, I'm tired all the time. I said, well, she said the state is so big and she traveled so much. But I really liked Ann Richards.
You know, I wish, and they can, thank goodness to YouTube and Google and the internet, I wish more people were aware of Ann Richards. Unfortunately, she died of cancer in her early 70s, I think in the early 2000s. But this woman became, after she lost the governorship in Texas to W. Bush, who went on to become president, she became a national commentator on the Larry King program.
Yeah.
She gave speeches all over. She moved to New York, and everybody wanted to meet her.
Yeah.
She just was a very charismatic woman.
She was, yes.
Had funny sayings.
Yes.
Said funny things.
Right. Norman and I interviewed us on his camera that he had. We've got that interview somewhere.
She was a very unique lady, and just one of those people. I can see how she could become a governor.
Yes.
Because she was just, she had a way with people.
Well, and she was good at raising money. I really noticed that right away about her.
Now, Mary Ellen, I want to talk mostly about national politics here, but I have a statement that came out of the city here. I just wanted to get your take on this. This came out last Monday, after the city council meeting. Now, this was sent to the law director and the clerk of council. This is from City Councilman Jason Schaber, a Republican. He said, "I resign from all committee assignments I may have. Never in my 13 plus years on council have committee's assignments been reconsidered after a unanimous vote on council. It appears that there were sunshine law violations by Mr. Neff, Mrs. Lang, Mr. Pollock, Mr. Smith, Mr. Prater, and Mr. Barr," by the way, all Republicans as well. "These individuals are on the record admitting to violating open meeting laws. I will not be a part of any backroom deals that put a political party over doing what is best for the city. Tonight, the auditor admitted to a misappropriation of funds as well as coding the expense in a way that would hide the payment of an IRS penalty. Not one member of council said anything. The evidence is clear what she did. Nothing but silence. We should have dealt with the auditor immediately, but this council just wanted to play political games by removing myself and Mr. Ratliff from Legislation and Codes Committee with no explanation. The majority of council members made it very clear tonight they have no clue how to legislate or what to do or want to do what is best for the city of Marion.
Oh my.
And that's Jason Schauber,
Yes.
Republican.
Yes, isn't
And-
that something?
Yeah, and that's from a Republican.
Right.
When the council is 8-1 Republican.
Right,
And
that's right.
he's saying the council is have no clue how to legislate.
Really and truly. I didn't realize that had happened.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
in an open meeting, I was there. They asked the auditor if she did code these things wrong, and she said yes, which is a misappropriation of funds. And I imagine we're going to be hearing more about that as time goes on, because I believe that's a criminal offense. So we'll see where that goes.
Did the mayor say anything?
No, no. The mayor didn't say anything during that whole thing, and council didn't say anything during that whole thing when it was brought up.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting, the things that go on in this city.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, Mary Ellen, just on the whole, before we get to the national issues, you've followed what's been going on here with the auditor and the council and the mayor and all this whole falderall. Just on the whole, what do you make of it?
It's a terrible mess. I can't believe they're not doing anything. That is unreal. I don't see how they can get by with that.
No, but they really got all upset about who was going to be on what committee. That turned into a real shouting match at the...
Is that right?
Jason Schauber, a councilman, got up and walked out
Did he?
during the meeting.
Oh, I give him credit.
You know, he's a Republican, but as everybody who's watched him says, he certainly does not vote or side with the party. He really does seem to do what he thinks is best.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody says that. Not too many of those left.
No, there aren't.
What happened to those politicians who, even though they were Republican or Democrat, voted for their constituents?
You know, I just can't understand this group. I mean, they're letting our city just go down the drain.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. National politics, we've got to talk about this. Let's start with the presidential race, because as weird as it sounds, we're only about 9 months away from this thing in November. And I have heard so many prominent politicians, former First Lady Michelle Obama, Governor of California Gavin Newsom, Vice President Kamala Harris, they've all said, we are scared to death about this election. That the alternative is not just a Republican, it could be possibly a dictatorship, it could be the end of the democracy. That's what they're saying, and they're afraid voters don't understand that. What are you worried about this election with the Michelle Obamas and the Vice President Harrises and the Gavin Newsoms?
I go, sometimes I'm really worried, and then sometimes I feel like everything's going to be all right. I've had a couple of people ask me that I know probably had been maybe had voted before for Trump, and they were asking me about what I thought of Trump, and I said, I think he's crazy. And I don't think they're going to vote for him. I think there's a lot of people that aren't voting for him again because of what he's done. I can't believe that the polls are as bad as they are, really. And it's early, and I think Biden's the only one that can beat him, though. I don't think Newsom, or whatever his name is, what is it, the California governor?
Gavin Newsom, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he could, because I think Trump would make a whole bunch of jokes about California.
You know, I honestly don't think Gavin Newsom will get in, because I saw him do an interview, and I can't remember who it was with, But he said, now this has become a big conversation. I've had this conversation with so many people, and even last Friday night I had it with Matt here at the station, and this will be the first presidential election he's voted in, being 20 years old. But Gavin Newsom said he is worried about third parties.
Well, yes.
Because he's saying, yes, we've had them before, and that's okay, but this is not a typical election. This is not, okay, if you get the Republican, you might not like the policies, but it'll be okay. They feel that this could be the end of the democracy, and this isn't the time to be voting third party.
Well, that's part of the reason Al Gore lost.
That's true. And,
Yeah.
and I think somebody said the other day that Jill Stein, if you took her votes in 2016, that Hillary would have won 3 states, which would have put her over the top.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
that's a big fear of that.
Jill Stein, yeah. I remember her. She was sitting at the table with Putin. Remember?
Oh, I do remember that. She was, now, but back in those days, it's weird. Putin is a strange character because he met with a lot of presidents,
Yes,
and then
he did.
and then he went kind of off the deep end 2 or 3 years ago, and that's all. I'm not sure what happened with him. Maybe he always was that way, but he really all of a sudden decided he wanted to take over the world, and that hasn't gone very well for him. But are you worried about somebody jumping in here as a third party? People have thought Manchin is going to jump in.
I don't think it'd be a good thing to have another person in there because it's, we don't need that.
Even if you thought Biden was bad, because I'm trying to run this through my mind. Let's say you're Joe Manchin. Let's say you're somebody out there. You think Biden cannot beat Trump. Now, you getting in as a third party, is there any possibility you're going to win?
Are you directing this that Manchin thinks that Biden can't win?
I would think that would be his reason for getting in. I don't know. I don't know what his thinking is.
Well, I said, there he goes. He's going to screw something else up again. That's the way I felt about him.
But do Democrats vote for Joe Manchin? Because even though he's a Democrat in name,
I'd never vote for him, I'll tell you.
He a lot of times he sided with the Republicans.
Yeah.
So do Democrats really even like him?
I'd have no idea, but I knew his nephew.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his nephew was state treasurer when I was state treasurer. We were good friends. He was flamboyant. I mean, he would go through all these ceremonies and play it to the hilt. And I think that's what his nephew's doing.
Now, it is interesting because a third party can hurt a Republican, too. I don't know if we can say it fully, but certainly Ross Perot did not help George H.W. Bush in 92.
No.
That didn't help him. A lot of people feel he would have won that election had there been no Ross Perot. So it can work in the opposite direction. But would it? A lot of people want Liz Cheney to get in because they think she'll pull from the Republican side, which would hinder Donald Trump. But then I think they hate each other, so would it?
I really, she mentioned that when she was in one of her interviews, that if she got in, she might cause somebody to lose that she didn't want to lose, She was taking that attitude. It's hard to tell. I really think we'd be much better off if we only had the two in there. I don't know what's going to happen to Robert Kennedy, but hopefully nothing.
He just keeps on trucking along with whatever he says. The Green Party normally has somebody in there, and certainly the Libertarian Party always has somebody in there. I don't know who that will be, though. Last time, it was kind of a non-issue in 2020. But this time, it might be because people can get out and campaign, because it was COVID in 2020. In 2016, it certainly was an issue for Hillary with Jill Stein, who I believe was the Green Party candidate, and Gary Johnson, who I believe was the Libertarian.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see what happens. Marianne Williamson, I don't think anybody remembers she's still in there.
Well, at this point, as we've started these primaries, Trump has won the Iowa caucus, Trump has won New Hampshire, and the only one left now is Nikki Haley. Does she stand a chance at this point?
Well, I guess the cook, there's only one brother left, I guess. They aren't giving her any more money. Is what they said on one of the shows. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they said, which would make a big difference, I'm sure, in the campaign.
Do you think her staying in longer hurts Trump?
Well, I think it's good because it keeps his attention on her. I think that's good. But I'll tell you, she was against Roe versus Wade when she was governor. She had a big deal about that. And that's going to affect a lot of women's voting,
And there also is I believe she has said this, I hope I don't have this wrong, that she said she would pardon Trump if she was president.
Oh, I know, that about makes you sick. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because she started to go after him finally,
Yeah.
but she says she would pardon him. So it's kind of confusing, I think,
Yeah.
to a lot of people.
Yeah, and she'd be vice president if she could, too.
Well, that's another
Yeah.
big question. Do you think she would accept it if it was
Yeah.
offered?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. That's the way she is.
Do you think he'll offer it to her?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
A lot of people feel it's going to be this Tim Scott, who Nikki
Well,
Haley appointed.
Yes, but I thought they said he couldn't. Somebody said he couldn't run. He couldn't be vice president. I don't know why, but I just heard somebody say that.
I saw him at that, and I hate to be in these stark of terms, but the analysts have said this, I'm sure you've heard it, that Trump feels that he needs a woman or an African American to run with him to win, because he's weak with those groups.
Well, I thought he was going to get the head of the Republican Party. What's her name? I never can say it. But she's as crazy as he is. I mean, really.
You know, Mary Ellen, for people who don't understand, let's go back 30 years to 1994. What was a Republican then, and what is a Republican now?
Well, they weren't quite as scary.
Well, in those days, they were the Bushes.
Yeah.
They were the, who else was, certainly we had some, Bob Dole was still around in those. McCain was a big name in those days.
Yeah.
So Mitt Romney, that group.
Oh yeah, and he's still there. Yeah.
That was what a Republican was.
Yeah.
The Reagans. Mm-hmm. It's a little different than what a Republican is now.
Well, and Jack Kennedy's brother,
Ted Kennedy?
Ted would talk to they'd talk to one another. They were all good friends.
It's my understanding McCain and Ted Kennedy got a lot of legislation done together.
They did, and yeah, they got along fine. And the other guy that I can't think of his name, but anyway, there was about 4 of them. But they really thought a lot of each other.
And even Bob Dole was not hated. I mean, people liked him.
Yeah.
He left his job in the Senate, to run for president.
Yeah.
And he was a war hero. I think people respected that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. We've got Mary Ellen Withrow here, and we're going to come back and talk about a little more about the presidential election. But we also want to talk about this judgment of $83.6 million for defamation. E. Jean Carroll, we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about football, because holy mackerel, this has turned into a political thing now.
Yeah, Tyler Swift.
Oh my Lord. Who would have known?
And Judge Judy.
And Judge Judy.
Yes, she's for Biden.
Oh.
And think about the groups that they bring in.
Well, that's a big. We're going to come back and talk about this Taylor Swift thing, because this has got the people at Fox News all upset.
Yeah.
They are upset. We're coming back with Mary Ellen Withrow right after this. Hey, Scott Spears back here with Mary Ellen Withrow, 40th Treasurer of the United States. Again, March 1st, 2024 will be the 30th anniversary of being sworn in. Mary Ellen being sworn in as the 40th Treasurer of the United States, and a lot going on this year. Before we get to because this is a whole thing, the whole football thing. This is, I never thought we'd see something like this, but here it is. But let's stop before we do that with E. Jean Carroll. Now, a lot of people are confused here. E. Jean Carroll won a lawsuit judgment for defamation. speaking out, calling names, former President Trump did of her. $83.6 million for defamation. Mary Ellen, that's almost unheard of.
Yes, and she's going to spend it to make him upset.
I heard her the other day saying that she was going to spend it on groups that were affected by
Right.
physical violence and things like that.
She said women's groups.
Women's groups,
Yeah.
that's right. Now, this is an interesting thing. Why do you think he didn't stop? Why couldn't
He can't.
He can't.
He can't.
It's
stop.
impossible.
No. Yep. He's still going.
Yeah. Well, why? Isn't there somebody around him at this point who can say, "Hey,
No.
this is not good"?
He does what he wants to do, and it doesn't matter what anybody says to him.
Is that his appeal in some way to
Yeah.
his group?
Yeah, that's the way some people are, and he's certainly that way.
When you've heard E. Jean Carroll on these shows, what do you make of her?
You know, I watched Rachel Maddow Monday night. She had practically the whole program about Eugene, and in fact, she had her on. I mean, she talked about her background, which I learned a lot about her background that I didn't know. And then she had her on, and she's a delightful person. And I sure give her credit for what how she fought back, you know.
Now, it's my understanding the original, and I believe it was $3 million for, wasn't it sexual battery? Wasn't that where this started?
I don't remember exactly either. I don't know.
I think it was sexual assault,
Yeah.
a civil trial, because I think the statute of limitations had run out. So that's what, but I think that was only a $3 or $4 million ruling, but he just didn't stop.
No.
And that's how we got this defamation
No.
ruling for $83.6 million.
But they were talking tonight, before I came here, that he's using the money that was donated to him for his campaign.
Oh,
That's where he's getting the money.
do you think, who are the donors to Trump? Is it small groups or are there corporate entities behind this? Do we even know at this point?
No, but I don't know. I have no idea.
Where did the money for the Democrats used to come from? I know a lot of union money used to be there.
Mhm.
Is that still there in a big way?
I think so. Not as big as it was, I don't think, but because the unions aren't as strong as they were. But Biden's still trying to get the vote of the unions. He got the UAW, and he's working on the I can't think of it now, but anyway.
Teamsters?
Well,
Teamsters?
yes, Teamsters.
I think there's still
Yes.
a Hoffa in charge of that last I knew. I believe Jimmy Hoffa's son or something.
Really?
Well, last I knew he was in charge of it, I believe.
I remember talking to the Teamsters. I spoke to all the union groups.
Now, I want to get to this football, the Super Bowl, coming up here in a couple weeks. You like football, Mary Ellen, right?
I watch Ohio State.
Ohio State.
I don't watch
The
much
professional.
else. Yeah.
What do you make of this? It's really not about the Super Bowl now. It's about Taylor Swift. What do you
Yeah.
make of her popularity?
Oh, I think I know my granddaughter just thinks she's the best thing that ever happened, and I think there's an awful lot of young people like that.
When you've seen her or watched her, what is it about her? Because I think, it's certainly not a knock on her, but I think a lot of us look at her and say, what is it? What does she have? That she was Time Magazine Person of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
When she goes into a community, they raise money. She can fill stadiums, and they still don't have enough tickets. Ticket costs are enormous. She starts dating this football player, and the NFL ratings go up. His jersey sales went up 400%. What is it about this girl? I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I can't answer that, but boy, she's popular.
Yeah, there's a following there.
Yeah.
Now, which leads us into politics, because I'll try to set this all up. The Chiefs, which Travis Kelce is her boyfriend, he plays for the Chiefs. He's a player for the Chiefs. They're going to the Super Bowl against the 49ers. Well, a lot of people feel that's conspiratorial because how did they get that far? They weren't that good a team, and this is all the NFL wanting Taylor Swift to be at the game because it's going to raise everything up.
Now you're talking about the Chiefs?
The Chiefs.
Yeah.
Okay, so all that being said, we got to that point. Well, then people at Fox News kind of went a little off the beam because I saw Hannity, I saw Janine Pirro, I saw 3 or 4 other people. They're scared to death that she's going to endorse Biden at the Super Bowl, and this has all been a big plan. And boy, they're worried over there at Fox.
Good.
But I mean, do you really think, I mean, I'm not saying that she's not going to endorse Biden, but do you really think this is a conspiracy theory that she's going to go to the Super Bowl and endorse? I don't even know that they'll ask her.
Well, I don't know how it was first announced because all I know, somebody said to me that Taylor Swift and Judge Judy were both for Biden. And I hadn't heard it, and then now I've heard it a lot, but I don't know the background on it.
It's my understanding, and I may have this wrong, but it's my understanding that in 2020, Taylor Swift backed Biden. So I think they feel she'll do it again. But I think it was more, if I remember, and somebody will have to look this up, I think it was more of she didn't want people to vote for Trump. Mm-hmm. I don't know that she's so much, it wasn't a direct endorsement of Biden. It was more of a vote against Trump, is what she said.
I feel the same way.
Well, there you go. So I guess being bigger than even she was in 2020, which she is now, far bigger, I think.
Oh yeah, she's made $1 billion.
Yep.
I mean, that's impressive.
At 30-something year, early 30s.
Right. And she writes music all the time.
Writes music.
I'm impressed with that.
She just Instagrammed out, go register to vote, and percentages of people went up who registered to vote.
Really?
Yeah. So I think this is where the fear's coming from on the Republican side. So does it matter? Because for a long time they said, well, celebrity endorsements really don't matter. Because Hillary had, I think, all the celebrities back in 2016.
Yeah, she probably did.
And it didn't help her in that particular way. But now, maybe it does.
Yeah, but Hillary actually had the popular vote.
She did.
Yeah.
Well, and that's confusing to a lot of people, too, because they'll show these polls, which are popular vote, but that's not how we elect a president. We elect them on the Electoral College.
Mm-hmm. I think we ought to change it.
You think it should be on the popular vote?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think only, since 2000, a Republican has only won the popular vote.
Al Gore had the popular vote.
Al Gore had, I think Bush had it over Kerry, though.
Did he?
I think so. And then Obama had it twice, and Trump's never had it. So I think the only time was Bush when he beat Kerry was over the...
Yeah.
So one time since 2020, but yet we've had 3 terms of Republican presidents.
Yeah, we'd have had two more Democrats if it had been in effect.
The Electoral College is supposed to give the idea. What is your understanding of why we have the Electoral College?
Well, they thought it made things more fair, but if everybody voted for this person and you got that number of votes, they should be the one that's won. The way I look at it, you know.
I guess I think there's some idea that how will people campaign? I don't know how that would work.
Well, it would work. They'd campaign in the bigger states just like they always do.
Well, it is interesting. You know, living in Ohio, we see a lot of the political ads, and the candidates visit here during election time. But if you live in California or New York or Texas, you really don't see them because they consider those foregone conclusions. Mm-hmm. I think a popular vote might change that.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. So I don't know if you'd have to go to all 50 states or how that would play out.
I don't think some of them have ever gone to North Dakota.
Yeah, North Dakota, Hawaii, Alaska. You don't see them there very often.
Right.
They're just certain, but Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, that's where they spend most of their time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the money.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
That's where the money comes from.
Well, should money be, I mean, you got to have money to run. But should it be as important as it is? Because a lot of that does wipe out third-party candidates. is they don't have the apparatus to raise the kind of money
No.
that they need.
No, they can't. Well, the amount of money goes up every time. I mean, it's a lot more than it was when I ran. You remember I said that Gertrude Donahue said she couldn't raise $750, and gosh, that wouldn't touch it now.
Now, at that time, she was involved in a scandal at that time, wasn't she?
She had an embezzlement.
Yeah.
She had talked to all the people that supported her. I mean, primarily the union people, and she realized that she wasn't going to be able to raise the money.
How did whatever became of her when she was out of office?
Well, she went to live with her sister in Naples, and that's where she died.
Did you ever see her after she left office?
Yeah, I saw her. Yeah.
Kind of a unfortunate ending, I would guess, after being in that position and then just kind of having to.
Well, it didn't turn out unfortunate for her because she didn't get arrested for anything, which I think she should have been. But the person that did the embezzling went to prison. But and that's what she was worried about, is because she didn't help me at all. And she asked me to run, but from there she didn't do a thing for me. And it was because she was scared to death she was going to get hit with a bunch of fines and everything. Yeah. And she didn't. Yeah.
Now, why do you believe she didn't get hit with these fines?
I don't know.
When we look back to you becoming Treasurer of the United States, because I wanted to ask this when we were there, were you ever told why you were the choice over the other lady?
Not really. No. He said he wanted people like this, and this. I remember them telling me that, and I was one of those.
You know, Bill Clinton had an interesting group of people when you look at it. He had Janet Reno as the Attorney General and Madeleine Albright as the Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. So he definitely promoted people, women certainly.
Yeah, he had a lot of women, yeah. Yeah, he did.
And it turned out okay for him because all of these women, except Janet Reno, who got tied up in that whole Waco thing. Were you there, or was that before you? I can't remember when Waco happened.
I came in on the Waco thing.
What was that like?
It was not fun. I watched the chief of staff have to show his diary. That's the reason I didn't keep a diary for a while. And then after about a couple of years, I started keeping one, which I'm sorry I didn't right in the beginning. But he had to show it in the court, and yeah, it was a bad situation.
Do you keep a diary today?
No, I don't anymore. No.
What did you do with your diaries?
I've got it.
What do you have any plans to do anything with those?
Nope.
You know, a lot of people. Barbara Bush was very protective of her diaries.
Oh, was she?
She was, but then somehow they ended up printed after she went on.
Yeah. Mine just I just put down where I was that day. That's about all I did. Yeah.
When we look back at that time, of course, people remember the Monica Lewinsky thing. What was it like to be in Washington during that?
Well, it was that happened during the shutdown of the government, and Norman always said the president didn't have enough to do.
Well, that could have been. He was bored, I guess.
But no, it was. I had to work, but Treasury was just like nobody there, you know.
One of the great stories, and I had never heard this story until John Glenn died. And you came in, we were doing a radio show remembering John Glenn, and you told the story of John Glenn coming to your office during the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky. Tell that, it's such a poignant story.
Well, we were sitting there talking, and he said, he said he'd have been a great president if this hadn't happened. I said, I know. I said, all they're going to talk about is this, and that's the way it is.
The final question on this whole Monica Lewinsky thing, when people like John Glenn and yourself are there, and certainly favorable to Bill Clinton because he appointed you to this position and you certainly voted for him for president, what's it like to have somebody you like and you want to be president, but doing something maybe you certainly don't like?
Right. It's difficult. I was talking to a lot of school children at that time, and they said, do you know the president? I said, yes, he appointed me. And go, okay. I said, I wish the president could hear that. Yeah.
What did you say?
I just went on.
Just went on.
I ignored it. Because what am I going to say? I'm not going to say anything. No.
It's very interesting because I caught a show the other night on Watergate. And it's fascinating because most people feel, even people who hated Richard Nixon, feel that had that not happened, he would have went down as one of the better presidents.
Mm-hmm. He did a lot of good after he was out.
Yeah, even the Democratic presidents called on him.
Yes, I read a book and I was amazed at what he did for all of them.
I watched that thing on Richard Nixon and I can't figure him out because on one hand he was a very open-minded person. I mean, he started the EPA.
Yeah.
But yet there was something and truly personal, kind of like Clinton. This flaw with women, unfortunately. Nixon's wasn't with women, but he had a weird paranoia of people.
He was, he wanted to control his election, and that was his paranoia. Yeah.
Well, and the whole thing about the tapes. Mm-hmm. I mean, he knew that he was being recorded.
Yeah.
Why he didn't burn those tapes before they ever found them? It's odd.
Well, he probably thought they wouldn't discover him. That's probably what he thought.
Well, I know that in this thing they asked him why he didn't burn them, and he said, because I never thought I said anything on there that was criminal. Hmm. So he said, now that I realize that clearly they believe I did, I would have burned them. Mm. But what's the most fascinating thing about Watergate? Did you know Barry Goldwater at all?
Mm-mm. No.
He was the one. This Republican former presidential candidate is the one who went to Nixon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and said, listen, you're going to be impeached, and it's going to go to a vote in the Senate, and he was senator. And he said, listen, you've got 4 votes in the Senate, and one of them isn't mine. And that's when Nixon knew. He left the next day.
Did he? Yeah.
Wait, was there somebody like that in the Democratic Party who could have gone to the president and said, listen, this is ridiculous. Why'd you do this?
Well, I think there was quite a few people who did that.
Yeah. Well, and in hindsight now, did it hurt Al Gore?
Yeah, it did, and I'll tell you why. Al Gore was furious. And he was so furious that he didn't ask Clinton to help him run for office, and he lost. If he'd have had Clinton help him, he'd have won.
Even after the
sure
scandal? That's interesting.
Yes. Yeah, that scandal didn't do anything to Clinton.
No, oddly enough, even though
he was popular.
Even though people talk about it, and even though people make jokes about it, and even though it's still remembered today, it never really hurt his popularity.
Not at all. No.
Why could she never pick up on her husband's popularity?
I think a lot of people blamed her for staying with him. What was so ironic was that Al Gore, was so mad about this, and then he left his wife. But they're still married, but they don't live together. I mean, they live separate lives. But, he left his wife, and he's so upset at Clinton for what he did.
Yeah. And here Hillary and Bill are still together.
Yeah.
So I would have to say that probably is not a lot of people have felt for a long time it's arranged, but there would be no point to be together now if they didn't want to be.
Who?
Bill and Hillary.
Oh. Well,
Because they've stuck together now.
well, yeah, they, you know, it's their world.
You know, it's very interesting because it never happened before that a former First Lady ran for President of the United States. She did it twice. First time didn't make it through the primary, lost to Obama. Second time loses to Trump. You know, if her name was Hillary Taylor and not Hillary Clinton, would she have won? Did that hurt her in the end?
You mean if she wasn't married to him?
If that scandal hadn't happened, if she wasn't Bill Clinton's wife, who a lot of people grew to dislike by that point, not Bill Clinton it seemed like, but her, as you said, they blamed her for staying.
They blamed her, yeah. I don't know. You know, when we were doing our Christmas tree lighting, and we were talking about that, and those guys said they didn't like her, and they didn't know why. You know.
Yes, back over in
Yeah.
Caledonia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And that's kind of the way it was, and I think people are judgmental, and that judgment might have been against her rather than him. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, and maybe you can speak to Hillary Clinton on this, because I think people are fascinated by her. In a way, I think people are more fascinated by her than Bill Clinton. I think they kind of understand who Bill Clinton is and what he did and that. But Hillary Clinton is strange in a way. She had trouble winning elections. There was always this, we don't like her, as you say, that people still do that today. But yet, if you wanted a senator during 9/11 to get something done, she was.
Yeah.
If you wanted a Secretary of State during the Bin Laden
Yeah.
days, she was. So she's great in appointed positions,
Yeah.
but you can't elect her for some reason.
But she would have been a good president.
Well, that's what the point I was going to make was during that 2016 election. I'll never forget this. The late actor Charles Grodin was on, and I said, Charles, because he used to come on a lot. I said, Charles, you've met both Hillary and Trump. I said, tell me, not politically, but tell me what they are like as people. And he said, I'll tell you a perfect story. He said, I had dinner with Trump one night, and Trump said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm on 60 Minutes. And he said, I don't know that show. And he said, that's Donald Trump. He said, I was in the back of the room with Hillary one time. We were both speaking at an event when she was senator from New York. And I leaned over to her and said, I hear you're going to sing at the end of this speech. And she said, that'll really clear the room. And he said, that's Hillary Clinton. But that funny part of her never translated out to people.
No, it didn't. No.
Is she like that?
Yeah, she's just
Easygoing?
like you and me. Yeah.
But why do people think that she is
Because
evil?
They form an opinion, and I think a lot of it was about what we're discussing here, and they have their opinion. They don't know her at all, and that's it.
Well, you said you had a lot of respect for Eleanor Roosevelt, and really, when you think about it, people hated her.
Oh, I thought she was terrific. Yeah.
There was what was his name? That I can't say it was a gossip. Westbrook Pegler hated her. He used to write the most horrible things about her.
Well, she did the president's work. I mean, traveling and finding out things for him and what he wanted done. She did it.
What do you make of the money? Do you think there should be changes? This always comes up every so often.
Yeah.
We should put different people on quarters. I think Maya Angelou's even on something now. Not maybe it's a commemorative thing.
It's a commemorative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that good for the money to do stuff like that?
Well, I think we've gotten used to what's on there, and I really feel we ought to leave it alone. But that's my opinion.
Is it good to have Ben Franklin on there? A lot of people question that.
I like him. Yes, he did a lot of good. He took care of France for us.
He certainly did. We wouldn't have had a good relationship with France.
Right.
Do you think he would have been president if he wasn't so much older than the other guys?
Yeah.
Because he certainly was well thought of.
Yeah, I think he would have. Yeah.
When we talk about those the founding fathers, as they're called, Jefferson and Adams and Washington and Madison, who do you like in that group? Who's your most favorite? President's Day coming up in a couple weeks.
Well, let me think. Who would I? Well, I don't know. I didn't know any.
Yeah, no. That was before you.
Yeah. But not knowing him now, I knew I was alive for all of Roosevelt's terms, and I was there, and it's different than saying what I don't know about these other people that started our country. I mean, it must have been quite a job to get everything organized. There was one thing they forgot to do. They forgot to say that we couldn't elect somebody that had been arrested.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to change
I bet it will.
before the election in November?
I bet it will.
Do you think any of these trials will come to fruition before November?
I hope so.
The Trump trials?
I hope so.
It's very interesting because
Yeah.
it theoretically could happen at this point. Somebody who's a convicted criminal could be elected president. How did that ever, for over 200 years, remain
They never
doable?
They never thought it would happen.
And here we are.
Here we are. Yeah.
Somebody was talking about the makeup of voters. Do you think the makeup of voters is different now? That they would vote for a convicted felon, they would vote for somebody who's convicted of sexual battery, that it's a little different.
Well, evidently they will, because a lot of people say they're going to vote for him.
People like Nixon's political career was over after Watergate. Gary Hart lost everything because of a tryst with somebody. But now, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be as big a thing.
Well, let's hope that the people get themselves straightened out on that.
Do you like to talk politics with people just in a normal conversation?
Yeah, if they agree with me.
If they agree with you.
I don't like to talk to somebody that's going to vote for Trump.
Now, have you ever had somebody in your family? Because
No, all of my family is totally against. There isn't one soul in my family that has anything to do with Trump.
now at one point you did tell me that some of your daughters may had political ambitions. Anybody, grandkids, anybody ever speak to you about maybe I'd like to get involved?
No, my Linda, after Hillary lost, wanted to run for something, but she didn't then. Yeah.
Would you like to see one of your grandkids run for something?
My grandkids, it would depend on what it was, when it was.
It's interesting. But would you have been okay if Linda had decided to run?
I didn't agree with what she wanted to run. She wanted to run for commissioner, county commissioner. I said, you're going to have a miserable life if you do that.
And you knew the county.
I know the county.
You know the county.
Yes.
Well, it's so you would have advised her against it?
I did. And
You did?
I told her to run for something less than that, and like township trustee. Well, then there was no ability to get into that, whoever it was. They were already there. A lot of the township trustees are there for years and years, and yeah.
They stick around.
Yeah.
Mary Ellen, these hours go by so fast. And this has been fascinating. Boy, I tell you, the little things you learn along the way.
What did you learn?
I knew that I wasn't sure which one of your daughters wanted to run. I didn't know why she didn't end up running. I didn't know that you would kind of dissuade maybe your grandkids from running for office. That's interesting.
Well, I said, I said all you're going to hear is complaints.
That's true.
I mean, if you run for treasurer, you don't hear complaints every day.
That beats it. This has been Scott Spears with Mary Ellen Withrow heading for the dugout.